Thanks for joining us on Fox43.com and Fox 43 Plus. I'm Marshall Keeley. If you haven't cast your ballot yet, there's just a little bit of time left on this election day until polls close at 8 p.m. This election cycle, we asked you which topics were most important to you, the voters, and you answered. Those include immigration, inflation, and abortion. We're recapping our Pennsylvania's Choice series, highlighting how these issues are impacting our communities and where the candidates stand when it comes to policy.
There's always something good being cooked up at El Rancho Grande in York Springs. And the man who does the cooking knows full well how to create a finished product, one ingredient at a time.
Always I work in restaurants, and always I want to be something for me.
Sergio Barragan has worked in restaurants dating back to his time in his native Mexico and put it to use when he opened El Rancho 3 years ago. Throughout those 3 years, his customer base has grown from the Adams County locals to new residents looking for a taste of home.
More people, they come in from like Central America, and used to be a lot of Mexicans. Now the Mexicans, they move around a little bit.
Barragan's restaurant represents the growing immigrant population in the small borough of York Springs. Roughly half the borough's population is now Latino, all looking for work and a community of their own.
Well, I think it's the community, the Spanish people, they want to be together.
It was just something that's always been as long as we have had orchards and farmlands around us.
Nina Tipler is the mayor of York Springs and has lived in the borough for over 30 years. She says immigrants have been part of the community in some form for the entire time she's lived there, and that their contributions have been as fruitful as the fruit they help grow.
The people that come here are literally feeding the world. We have apple orchards and farms, wheat crops, soybeans, completely around us. And if people aren't here willing to do those jobs, then the food chain stops.
They're a part of our fabric and our lives.
Ellie Hollibaugh Vranich is one of the owners of Hollibaugh Brothers Farm and Apple Orchard in nearby Biglerville. It's one of the largest apple producers in one of the largest apple producing areas in the nation. And Vranich says the 15 to 20 immigrants employed full-time, along with double that number in the growing season, are indispensable to both the business and atmosphere of the community.
They work with us, they play with us, they go to church with us, and we spend time both on farm and off together. We could not have the business we have without these people.
It comes as communities with higher immigrant populations throughout the country have come under attack. This includes Springfield, Ohio, whose population of Haitian migrants have become the subject of online conspiracy theories which have caused numerous threats to be made against its local schools. Mayor Tipler says that in York Springs, the immigrant population, old and new, are no different than anybody else who rests their heads in the borough.
This is their home, and I hate to say they and we, because we're all we. This is where we all live, and this is where we all should be comfortable.
And one of those who has become comfortable in York Springs is Barragan, who has seen new generations of immigrants arrive in a small Adams County borough, ready to earn their fair share.
They're working for their families. We have a very, very good community in York Springs. I don't see any crimes or robbery. So I think people, they're positive, they come into work.
Working and building a new life, one ingredient at a time. James Corrigan, Fox 43 News. The fight against drugs is contested in every county in every state in America. And in Cumberland County, that fight lately has come from another enemy, thousands of miles away.
It was very obvious that the methamphetamine was not the methamphetamine from the 90s and the 2000s.
Kenny Hassinger is the chief of the Cumberland County Drug Task Force, which is currently carrying out Operation Speed Bump to arrest dealers of methamphetamine. What they've found is that the drugs are not being made here in Pennsylvania.
Methamphetamine traditionally in Pennsylvania was home cooked. It was clear to all the officers that the methamphetamine was being imported into our county, into our state.
It is stuff that is definitely coming from outside the United States, most likely from Mexico.
District Attorney Sean McCormack says the influx his office is seeing in Operation Speed Bump is part of a wider trend.
A few years ago, everybody was talking about fentanyl and heroin. Then you started seeing fentanyl in other drugs, cocaine, even marijuana sometimes. Right now what we're seeing is an influx or kind of a resurgence of the methamphetamine.
It comes as encounters at the border between officers and illegal immigrants or asylum seekers reached record highs of above 2 million in each of the last 2 years and topped 300,000 in a month for the first time back in December. The number has dropped significantly in the past several months, going down 55% since executive action was taken by President Biden in early June. But local law enforcement continues to see drugs arrive in Pennsylvania from smugglers across the border. Operation Speed Bump has seen 55 arrest warrants given for drug traffickers in Cumberland County. And McCormack and Hassinger believe that controlling the southern border is the key to curtailing the flow of drugs into the area.
We see fentanyl being packaged into compressed pills. They look just like Adderall. They look like Ritalin. Kids are taking them, not realizing it's fentanyl, and we're having overdoses. Those aren't being produced in a mom and pop lab or in a residence in Carlisle Borough. They're being shipped into our state.
It should not be treated as a political issue. It should be treated as a security issue because it really is something that's endangering the security of our communities.
James Corrigan, Fox 43 News.
It's more than 1,500 miles from Pennsylvania, but the situation at the U.S. southern border with Mexico continues to loom large in this swing state. One presidential candidate talks about illegal immigration from the podium more than any other topic.
We're going to close that border so tight, it's going to be closed.
Immigration has always been Donald Trump's #1 issue.
The campaigns kind of set the agenda. Obviously, this has been a centerpiece of the Trump campaign.
Former President Trump's stance on immigration policy has evolved since his time in the Oval Office. He's still in favor of a border wall, but has also expressed support for large deportations. He plans to enact a series of executive orders if elected, stripping the citizenship rights from children of undocumented immigrants, implementing a travel ban, and unleashing interior immigration enforcement.
He has long advocated for a border wall, and in fact, the Biden administration has continued construction of that border wall. But now, because that border wall is continuing, Donald Trump has moved to a harsher stand on immigration.
He wants to turn much of the campaign rhetoric into a referendum on immigration policy because he thinks and has expressed that immigration affects our lives in many ways.
Despite his inability to solve the problem during his time in office, the former president has continually pinned the blame on the failings of the Biden administration and, by association, Vice President Harris.
The problem for Vice President Harris is that during the Biden administration, the immigration problem did not go away. And in fact, President Biden really only dealt with the issue of immigration with, 6 months before the election, something like that.
I don't hear Democrats talking about it as much except to say, well, President Trump, you're to blame for killing a bill that could have solved this problem. That's their approach.
I have no pride in saying that this is a perfect immigration system. I've been clear, I think we all are, that it needs to be fixed.
While the vice president has faced criticism on the issue of immigration from Republicans, she plans to reintroduce the bipartisan border security bill if elected, promising to overhaul the country's immigration system and support Border Patrol.
They had a bipartisan bill that was scuttled by President Trump's desire not to support it. That bill could be resurrected.
Whoever ends up in the White House, patching the problem at the border will only happen through cooperation.
It really is going to take a bipartisan measure in Congress in order to fix the system that is, by all accounts, really broken.
Marshall Keeley, Fox 43 News.
The specter of violence and crime has hung over Pennsylvania cities for decades. 27-year-old Christian Watt was shot and killed.
This community is really just heartbroken here.
21-year-old was found dead with a gunshot wound.
Another victim, a 17-year-old boy, was also killed.
And at any moment, it can cripple a community.
But he was a good person, and I don't think no one deserves to die for anything.
For years, cities have not had the tools to fight crime. But in York, these tools came in the form of regular people simply looking to make a difference.
They retaliate using gun. I retaliate using love.
TIFLO leads the York Group Violence Intervention Program, which has evolved since its 2016 conception into a community partnership with law enforcement to prevent violent crime.
I want people to understand that police care about them too.
York Police Lieutenant Matthew Irvin is the GVI program's law enforcement lead and provides a law enforcement presence to the program's community outreach mechanism called Customs, which sees the group visit the homes of residents involved in recent incidents in order to offer them a second chance.
So what we was able to do was to get grant funding to offer scholarships. You call that number right now, we officially now work for you.
We know as a police that we can't arrest our way out of it. We know that arresting isn't going to be the solution. So if we can find other ways to get people not to commit crime other than the threat of going to jail or the threat of getting arrested, it's great.
The program has paid dividends, helping bring on a 75% reduction in homicides, a 63% drop in the number of people struck by gunfire, and a 50% decrease in shots fired incidents from 2022 to 2023. The tools to fight violent crime are in place, but the resources to get those tools didn't come overnight.
This is a once-in-a-lifetime cash infusion that we'll probably never see again.
York Police Commissioner Michael Muldrow is speaking on the more than $6 million in funding for public safety in York from the American Rescue Plan, which President Biden signed in 2021.
We had the traditional funding that we asked for to be able to put additional boots on the ground with our GVI law enforcement team, and then we were able to use some of the funding itself to support actually providing, bringing additional officers, putting additional patrol officers on the street.
The result of the money was the hiring of 8 to 10 new officers in the York PD, along with 3 new members of the GVI team, including a trauma counselor. The money will also go to starting a drone program, purchasing new equipment such as tasers, and building a new rec center as part of an initiative called Reprogram. Muldrow says that dollars freed up by ARPA funding helped fund the scholarships to hack schools, which have become a staple of GVI outreach, offering a chance at higher education for both victims and offenders of gun violence.
We could go to the individuals who have been shooters in our community, individuals who have been toting guns and causing problems in our community, and say, if you put your guns down, I'll give you this scholarship to go to hack.
The issue of crime in cities will never fully go away, but those on the ground in York fighting every day to eliminate it say every chance they get to make an impact will be taken in order to help heal the communities they themselves are a part of.
This is my community. This isn't something I'm reporting on. This is the people that matter to me. These are the people that raised me. These are the people that go to school and activities and play football with my son. These are the people that I depend on, and I want them to know they can depend on me.
James Corrigan, Fox 43 News.
Safety and security are top of mind for American families as the election draws near.
It's a difficult issue, and it's a very personal issue, I think, for many Americans.
One presidential candidate has long focused his tough-on-crime approach on issues at the southern border, using anecdotal evidence to suggest America is somehow under attack.
Former President Trump's entire campaign is really about strength and sort of a masculine power. And that extends from his immigration stand through crime.
He wants to emphasize that message because it helps support his contention that America was a better place when he was leading it than it is now.
Recent data from the FBI paints a different picture of criminality in America, showing violent crime dropped 3% from 2022 to 2023, while murders and non-negligent manslaughter dropped 12%.
And I'm hereby calling for the death penalty for any migrant that kills an American citizen or a law enforcement officer.
Trump promised to take on drug cartels if elected, placing them on a list of foreign terrorist organizations, and has proposed the death penalty for human traffickers.
We have not really heard very many specific policies from the Trump campaign about changes that he would make in terms of crime, but we do know that his stand of "I promise I'll be tougher" is something that resonates with a lot of his supporters.
Meanwhile, Vice President Kamala Harris has stressed her legal experience on the campaign trail.
My entire career, I've only had one client, the people.
Vice President Harris served as a prosecutor in California where she was accused of being too harsh. And she was accused of being too much of a prosecutor.
I think emphasizing her past efforts at convicting and trying criminals I think that's been strong for her.
Harris has touted the Biden administration's investments in law enforcement, promising to address gun violence in the U.S. and take on drug trafficking.
She has been fairly vague when it comes to the specific proposals that she wants to enact if she's elected president in the area of crime and of criminal justice.
Marshall Keeley, Fox 43 News. What will fuel a nation? It's a question at the center of the debate on energy this election season. America's power comes from a variety of sources, and in recent years, energy has come at a higher cost, hitting your wallet and the environment.
Whoever is president has to deal with the fact that we are in this environmental crisis. At the same time, they have to deal with the issue that many Americans earn livings from the energy industry.
The majority of Pennsylvanians believe that climate change is real, that it's affecting their lives right now, and so they'd like to see something done about it. But I think it's such a complicated issue for many people.
Maybe the most talked about energy source during this election season happens to play a prominent role in the Commonwealth.
In Pennsylvania, we're in a rather unique position because fracking is so important in this state.
Fracking has come under fire for its harmful impacts on the environment and on surrounding communities. But the presidential candidates know it's also an economic driver. The industry employs more than 10,000 Pennsylvanians.
When we talk about something like fracking, it symbolically represents a discussion about the economy, and it also suggests that you value the communities where that is important.
Republicans have criticized Vice President Harris on the issue of fracking. Former President Trump made this claim during an appearance in Harrisburg.
The election will take place. If she won, you're not going to have any fracking in Pennsylvania.
Kamala Harris, when she was campaigning for office, when she ran for president in 2019, came out saying she was against fracking. The Biden administration has not done anything to oppose fracking.
Vice President Harris has not publicly opposed fracking during her campaign, but has highlighted policies to lower energy costs while addressing pollution and climate change, touting the Inflation Reduction Act's climate investments.
And I am proud that as vice president over the last 4 years, we have invested $1 trillion in a clean energy economy, while we have also increased domestic gas production to historic levels.
She is clear about what she will not do, which is end entire industries where so many Americans are employed.
Former President Trump has referred to climate change as a hoax in the past. He's repeated his support for the use of fossil fuels at campaign stops across the country, promising to restore American energy independence if elected and lower prices.
Drill, 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 baby, drill.
Former President Trump's campaign has not been as clear-eyed about addressing the environmental issues.
Many people would want to see a reduction in greenhouse emissions so that we can reduce the effects of climate change. But you see the effect that economic concerns also have on an election.
Marshall Keeley, Fox 43 News.
A stroll through a locally owned grocery store is like walking through the beating heart of a community, and Dottie's Family Market in Dover is no exception. But the last few years have left some of its customers on financial life support.
Paper towels, toilet paper, laundry detergent, and those kind of things are so stinking expensive.
You see the prices of milk. Milk, I noticed, is just it's too much.
Over the past 3 years, 2 to 3 years, it's just been a steady incline.
Dottie's owner Austin Hogue has seen his customers suffer through inflation, which in 2022 reached its highest levels in more than 40 years. Prices of everyday household items soared, hitting customers hard and families harder.
My daughter has 5 children, so that's an expense. You know, just keeping the house clean is an expense, and then feeding them.
Instead of going down the grocery aisles and getting everything they need for a week's worth of groceries, they might only come in, get the things that they really love, which is what makes us special, is all of the unique items. But the basket size shrinks a little bit just because the dollar doesn't go as far for a lot of the customers in the area.
But while customers are still recovering from sticker shock, inflation itself is also recovering. The number fell to 2.5% in August, roughly where it was in 2020 prior to the pandemic. Major retailers such as Target and Walmart have cut prices on thousands of items, while chains such as McDonald's and Subway have rolled out significant cuts on popular meals. Online grocery prices fell nearly 4% in August, the largest drop in at least a decade. But stores like Dottie's, who rely on suppliers for their products, have yet to see relief.
We just don't see it from the vendor side, so that's basically where we get our prices in weekly from the vendors, and we adjust accordingly.
Where Hogue has seen changes is in the physical size of the packaging of household items.
Or you ever take a thing of applesauce and like all of it is stuck in the bottom there? They put the little sides in there, but what you'll notice is, a lot of that type of stuff where the containers have ribs which shrink them up. It keeps it looking like the prices haven't moved, but the sizes continue to shrink for the same price.
It's a phenomenon not lost on the customers themselves, who hope that regardless of the result in November, the prices they pay won't make one of the beating hearts of the community go cold.
I don't see it so much as inflation as I do corporate greed. I hope that people fight harder, stand against it.
I hope things start evening out. Nowadays, you go to the grocery store, you really don't know what to expect until you get there.
Whether it's inflation, whether it's a pandemic, whether it's anything, it's just how you adjust to make the best out of the situation. And I think we'll be fine, and we'll keep going, but you just have to change the way you approach the customers.
James Corrigan, Fox 43 News.
The United States has enjoyed a steady economic recovery since emerging from the global COVID pandemic that sent prices soaring. But things still aren't adding up for Americans struggling to make ends meet and put food on the table.
The economic indicators of where we began and where we are now show that our economy is actually doing quite well. You can't say that either because so many Americans are having a really hard time.
While both the Trump and Biden administrations contributed to rising inflation by supporting federal stimulus money, one presidential candidate is walking an economic tightrope.
Vice President Harris is in an untenable position because she has been vice president for 4 years where prices have gone up.
The Trump campaign's approach, which is a wise one, is to tie the inflation and the concerns that people have about the economy to the Biden administration.
The best economists in our country are clear that my plan, compared to Donald Trump's, will strengthen our economy, his will weaken it.
Harris has focused much of her attention on the everyday American, promising tax cuts for the middle class, investment in small business, and lower health care costs.
Whether it's child tax credits, whether it's mortgage assistance, whether it's small business assistance.
She paid a lot of attention, especially to young people, to the middle class, and positioned herself as antithetical to what former President Trump is proposing.
We're not going to let these countries come in and steal our product and steal our companies, and all we're left with is one thing: unemployment.
Former President Trump has an advantage when it comes to the public perception of his ability to handle the economy. His proposal to end inflation includes tax cuts for workers, investment in American manufacturing, and jump-starting trade deals with other nations.
Donald Trump is a tariffs guy. This is what he's always believed in.
People often support tariffs because they believe that other nations have an unfair advantage in coming into this large consumer market and selling goods.
A tariff is simply a tax that is placed on an imported product.
Harris has attacked Trump's proposals, claiming the tariffs would lead to higher prices for consumers. Economists have a similar view.
The impact, obviously, would be an increase in the prices of many, many things.
While both candidates pledge to lower taxes and eliminate any tax on tips, each proposal may have one fatal flaw.
They are both proposing to cut taxes and to do other things that would help the middle class. But the question becomes, how would we pay for that?
In the world of politics, proposals are the easy part.
Given our system of checks and balances, if the opposing party to the president takes hold of Congress, then it makes it that much more difficult to implement.
Marshall Keeley, Fox 43 News.
A picture can be worth 1,000 words, and even more memories. Such is the case for Shay Ellis's family in Lewisberry, featuring 2 children and too many special moments to count. But some pictures bring back memories they would rather forget.
My oldest child is severely disabled, has had 5 brain surgeries, autism, hydrocephalus. My disabled child, my 14-year-old, requires an extreme amount of my time, attention, all the time. It's round the clock.
6 years ago, Ellis became pregnant for a 3rd time. But this time, it was accidental. With the financial and time-consuming strain of raising a disabled child, Shay concluded that having a 3rd child would cause more harm than good.
I, at the time, was a working-class person making $13 an hour, and so with having a severely disabled child, being working class poor, making under $40,000 a year, or maybe even under 30 at the time, it just wasn't feasible. And so I made the decision that I needed to make.
Ellis became one of the roughly 60% of people who have had abortions who already have children.
They understand fully what it requires of them and their resources to raise a child and to support the children they have.
Alexis McGill Johnson is the president of Planned Parenthood and says the circumstances of the choice to have an abortion can be deeply personal and should not be the subject of scrutiny from anybody.
We don't know why someone may need medical care, why something may have happened in relationship to the pregnancy. And that's exactly why we, as average citizens, perhaps as politicians, don't need to be involved in the decision making. If we trust women and we trust doctors to make decisions about what is right for them and what is best for them and their family and their plan, then we should actually say that and not let the government interfere in that decision.
It's the right to make such a decision that many abortion rights advocates believe is on the ballot this year. A decision which Ellis believes allowed their family to survive through difficult financial times.
It could have been the difference between my child being able to be in a gen ed classroom now in 9th grade. It would have been detrimental to my kids if I would have had that child. I would have potentially lost my job. I could have potentially, so many things could have happened, could have, would have, should have, of course. But I know for my living, breathing children that I made the best decision that I could at the time.
James Corrigan, Fox 43 News. A house can always be a home, even if those you share it with aren't always your family.
When I was growing up, we were a foster family. I was able to see firsthand the struggles that these young women in these families go through.
Wendy Vihar of York says the experience she had of living with at-risk youth made her appreciate someone else's decision to go forward with a pregnancy despite trying circumstances.
They were living in their car. The baby was maybe 4 months old. Eventually, Child Services placed them with us, and that allowed the family, the mother and father, to get back on their feet again. They chose life. They didn't abort their child, even under, the harshest circumstances that they were in.
Who can argue with the beauty and the joy that comes from seeing that precious baby right after the baby is born?
Maria Gallagher is the executive director of the Pennsylvania Pro-Life Federation and says Wendy's experience shows what she believes is the benefit of choosing to carry a pregnancy to term over having an abortion.
We know from research that there are as many as 1 million couples waiting to adopt children. And we also know from the research that there are as many as 1 million abortions in a given year in the US. So there are families out there who are waiting for the chance to show love to those precious children.
The question of whether to give women the chance to make the choice will potentially be decided in this election. Gallagher and Vihar say they believe that abortion is an act to end a human life and that there is support available for those considering it.
Abortion is the taking of an innocent, unrepeatable human life. And it is always a situation where a life is lost.
I believe in supporting the mother and the child. And we have pregnancy resource centers that are available that are able to help pregnant women with the needs for themselves and for their babies.
James Corrigan, Fox 43 News.
In a tight race at the top of the ticket, the issue of abortion could be what's keeping it close late in the game.
I think abortion rights are part of what's driving that. If this election were fought solely on the economy, I think Republicans would be winning more comfortably than they are.
Reproductive rights have been a talking point for both parties since the overturning of Roe v. Wade, something former President Trump continues to say he contributed to.
Former President Trump's stand on abortion is fairly convoluted. On the one hand, he takes great pride and credit for appointing the justices to the Supreme Court that in 2022 overturned Roe versus Wade with the Dobbs decision. And on the other hand, he really understands that that's not the most popular of opinions.
I don't think he's got a coherent message around this at the moment. He has seemed to change his position or be uncertain about how to express it.
While he has not publicly expressed support for a nationwide abortion ban, the former president repeatedly emphasizes the role states now play in determining abortion access, claiming at times the public prefers it.
Every Democrat, every Republican, liberal, conservative, they all wanted this issue to be brought back to the states where the people could vote. And that's what happened.
He's tried to distance himself by those unhappy voters by saying that moving it to the states is the most sort of little d Democratic way of handling a very difficult issue.
Meanwhile, Vice President Harris has repeatedly called out her opponent's stance on the issue.
And he should take responsibility for the fact that 1 in 3 women in America lives in a Trump abortion ban state.
She's not proposing anything that hadn't already been accepted wisdom, but she is proposing that we not step back and start to really go back to a time where LGBTQ Americans didn't have rights, where women's reproductive rights were taken away from them.
Public support for abortion access has risen since the federal abortion rights were struck down, with Associated Press polling from the summer showing 6 in 10 Americans support abortion access. Still, restoring reproductive rights nationwide could prove challenging for any Democratic administration.
There's such a strong core of anti-abortion sentiment in the Republican Party that there probably won't be a legislative solution unless you have either a change to the Senate filibuster rules or, large majorities, which aren't going to happen.
Marshall Keeley, Fox 43 News. Our election coverage continues on Fox43.com and Fox 43 Plus, and when the polls close, we'll be on Fox 43 reporting results as they start to come in. Stay with us. We'll be right back.